We worked on that project for 2 years. No weekends, no vacations, just code, coffee, and endless nights. When it was finally ready, he sold it. He erased my name, claimed every line of my work, and walked away with everything we built together. That sentence is the thing that rewires your life in an instant. It sounds dramatic when you say it out loud, but the reality is more boring and more corrosive. 1,000 small betrayals that add up until there's nothing left. It began like every startup story that ever made someone else money. Me and Mark met in a cramped incubator workspace. He had the charisma, I had the engineering muscle. I wrote the firmware, assembled the first boards, soldered late into nights when the rest of the building was silent. He schmoozed, he brought in coffee when investors came by, he polished slides, he made the demo flow on stage. It was a natural split. People always notice the person who speaks best, and investors always remember a confident face. We called it Lumen, a small hardware product that solved a stupidly annoying problem in smart homes. Nothing revolutionary in the grand scheme, but sharp, practical, and with a clean path to market. In the first year we lived off ramen and goodwill. In the second year we built prototypes that actually worked. We had a small loyal beta group. I had the commit history showing who wrote what. He had the relationships. It felt like balance. Relationships are fragile. They bend first, then they break. The day he pitched our product at the regional demo night, I was at home finishing a bug fix. I tuned into the live stream because I cared, because this was our baby. He walked on stage, his smile practiced. The audience loved the demo. Closer to the end, the host said, "Founded by Alex Martin." Alex? Not my name. I rewound the stream and watched the title slide again. The logo was the one I'd drawn after a 2 a.m. design jam. The copy deck had the roadmap I had sketched. But the founder credit, the media mentions, the email threats, it was all his. It's a ridiculous humiliation, not stolen money yet, not even a lawsuit, just being erased. People who don't do this work don't understand how personal ownership feels. But it's worse. It sends a ripple through the only networks that mattered. The investors who had semi-ignored me started to give him the attention I'd earned. The coders who used to laugh at my late-night commits now said, "Cool demo, Alex." It is petty and it is lethal. For a week I vacillated between fury and an odd numbness. I texted him, "We need to talk." He replied with the practiced shrug of a man who thinks control is about tone. "All good, man. Just riding the wave." That wave carried everything I'd built. And if I reacted in the obvious way, storm the stage, yell, create a scene, the narrative he could spin would be jealous former co-founder. So I didn't. I documented. I pulled commit logs, timestamps, invoices for parts, Slack threads where we hashed product specs. I printed emails. I archived demo videos with timecodes. The evidence is the opposite of romance. It's meticulous. It's the kind of thing that makes your hands ache from copying and pasting, but it's also the raw material of truth. If you want someone to stop stealing your story, you don't shout. You build an immovable file. When I started showing the file to people, reactions varied. Some friends said, "Leave it, he'll trip eventually." Some investors said, "You should sue." Other founders, the kind who'd been burned before, said something simpler and more surgical. "You can win without court. Make investors and press care enough to ask the question." I hired an IP lawyer. That felt strange and almost indulgent. We were two people who'd spent nights soldering, not financial barons, but a firm letter in a business inbox gets attention. The lawyer, clear and efficient, advised a 3-track approach: legal notice, targeted PR, and a focused professional circle outreach. In English, make the truth inconvenient for the right people. We started quiet. A cease and desist went to his company email: remove the demo, credit the origin, or face takedown actions. He fired back with a furious denial and a thin threat about defamation. People who take that position instinctively go loud. Loudness is sometimes the shelter of the wrongdoer. Next, I did something a little meaner and a lot more effective. I clustered the truth where it mattered. I reached out to the regional partners, the incubator, a local tech blogger who had written about us back when it was a scrappy 2-man project. I didn't beg, I presented. I handed them the folder with commit metadata, with timestamps, with Mara's mockups that had my watermark. I told a succinct, unemotional story. This is the provenance. This is the record. Look at it. Within 48 hours, 2 things happened in parallel. First, the blogger published a piece titled "Questions Raised About Lumen's Origin." It wasn't a conviction, it was a query. The investor who'd been about to write a term sheet called his associates and paused the deal. The second thing was internal. The incubator reopened its record requests and asked our prior mentors for notes. The air around him started to cool. He scrambled. He sent olive branch messages to people who mattered, staged interviews, used language designed to humanize himself and deflect attention. But each gesture revealed more cracks. Investors began cross-referencing claims. A partner discovered old Slack messages where he asked me for code access to test. The narrative changed from disagreement to pattern. People underestimate how badly reputations can crumble when paper is precise. He tried to litigate me into silence, a cheap tactic known as a slap-style threat, but the lawyer counseled restraint. We didn't need a courtroom to do damage. We needed the court of public opinion and a few closed circles of capital. The effect was the same. Term sheets evaporated. Intro calls stopped. And in the valley, momentum is the only currency. Still, he had one last move, a demo day the following month. It was his opportunity for a grand redemption. He would stand on stage with a cleaner narrative and investors in the front row. That was when I decided not to sit and watch. I created a small event, a panel on IP provenance and founder ethics, and I made sure certain people were there. I invited that same reporter, 2 angels, and a few engineers who knew the code lineage. The goal wasn't a confrontation on stage. It was a slow, methodical unmasking in plain sight. The night of his demo, after his pitch had the opening applause, the blogger asked him a question about early access and origins. The room went quiet in a way only a tech crowd knows, like attention tightening. He stammered. The seed was planted. Investors whispered. Later, his lead backer pulled the term sheet. He tried damage control. It was ugly. By the end of the week, his wireless inbox looked like a retreat. When an investor withdraws, it's rarely public. The effect is a cold thinning of opportunities. That's when you see the man alone, not triumphant, with polite apologies and meetings that end in silence. Part 3 is where all of this converts into a single, irreversible outcome. I never wanted him to be ruined in the cruel, personal sense. That's not my style. I wanted the system that props up cheaters to notice and correct. I wanted accountability. But in markets that value stories over truth, accountability often comes in the form of optics. Lost checks, empty inboxes, and a name that no longer opens doors. The final move was clinical. I packaged the narrative and the proof and delivered it to one person who could end the game. The lead partner of the fund that had floated him most of the rumors of success. I kept the note short and professional. Evidence files attached, timeline, and the simple question, would you still invest? The partner read, forwarded, and paused. 2 days later he responded. They were reallocating. No dramatic email to the world, no press release. The damage of this world is quieter. It is the removal of oxygen. A withdrawn check is not theatrical, it is fatal. In the weeks that followed, his company shrank. He laid off 2 people. A press correction appended my name to an earlier article. He reached out to me in private, pleading for a meeting for negotiation. I declined. I wanted the record, not a reconciliation in a coffee shop. My weapon was the truth, its result was the restoration of the ledger. He called me once, voice low. I'm sorry, he said, and I could hear the fitful noise of the city outside his window. I thought if I brightened the story no one would know. I listened. Forgiveness was not automatic, but the apology mattered in its way. People change, sometimes when what they thought was solid collapses beneath them. A year later I launched my first public run. A corrected, accredited Lumen with open credits and a co-founder list that included Mara and Jamal and my name. We did it the boring way, paperwork, patents, honest financing. The product found a modest market and that was enough. Investors who respected workmanship reached out. People who'd seen the earlier mess became early advocates because we'd been transparent. Revenge had a taste I hadn't anticipated. It was not cathartic fury but the quiet satisfaction of recalibrating what was fair. The man who stole my work lost access to the network that made him powerful. He had to rebuild from honesty or vanish from the circles that once fed him. Either way, the ledger balanced. Sometimes people ask, was it worth the time? The legal fees? The social exhaustion? The answer is complex. Yes, because the work you do is part of you. Letting it be taken without consequence teaches the wrong lessons. The cost was real. I paid in time, sleepless nights, and relationship frays, but the outcome saved the thing that mattered most. The story of who made what. I kept an old USB drive in a drawer for months. The folder with the metadata, the voicemails, the screenshots. Once in a while I open it, not out of malice but as a reminder. If someone erases your name, start keeping receipts. That's the thing about truth. It's patient. It waits in the logs, in the commits, in the timestamps. And when you need it, it's exact.